We're all set to start? Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:01. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming. At this time, is there a motion to seal the executive session minutes from tonight?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And we did take one vote in executive session. We approved one homeschooling request, and that passed 5-0. It's now time for our showcase. I'm going to let Dr. Cummings introduce Ms. Dandurand.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to introduce Gail and Jessica LaValle. Jessica, are you presenting as well, or are you just, okay. And so Jessica, if you all recall, is our ELA coach, K-12, and has been doing a fabulous job over this year and last year. And so Gail, as you know, has been working with the coaches on the coaching cycle. And what that means is that it's really around instructional improvement. And the role of the coaches is to help our teachers not only to introduce new curriculum, but to think about their pedagogy, to be a reflective practitioner, and to try to make sure that they are adjusting their practice based on the needs of the students. And so Gail's gonna talk a little bit about what they've been doing along that work.
Can you hear me? Great. All right, I know you already have the PowerPoint in your packet, so I'm not going to read it to you. I just wanted to just quickly go through it, answer any questions that you have. So as Dr. Cummings said, we do have instructional coaches in our district, and we truly believe in the value of coaching, not only for new teachers, new curriculum, people moving grade levels, but for teachers to have that opportunity to reflect on their practice, to have a thought partner, to be able to plan with somebody, and sometimes just to set a goal and have somebody from the outside to go in and give them ideas and suggestions. So I mentioned at our last budget meeting that when we had our Curriculum and Professional Development Council, which again is a think tank of teachers from throughout the district where we ask their opinions and their input on professional development, it came up that people wondered, could I have a coach if I don't fall into the buckets of I'm a new teacher, I have new curriculum, I've moved buildings, I've changed grade levels? And we said, well, sure, we'd love to be able to provide that to you. Do you think people would be interested in it? So that's where we started these new coaching cycles that we rolled out this year. I'm happy to say that we had about 20 teachers sign up voluntarily for the pilot. Because it is a pilot, we're kind of working through what's working, what's not working, how long a cycle should be, how many PLUs, professional learning units, you get for a cycle, and so on. So we're hoping by the end of this, we can really tease out what worked and what didn't work. And we are really thankful for those 20 teachers who have signed up for this pilot. I just put this slide up there to show you some of the benefits of coaching that I know you're all familiar with, but it does support the teachers in their personal goals or school goals or district goals, as well as the buckets that they know existed of new materials, new grade level, and so on. Coaching can look like many different things. Sometimes the coaches go in and they plan with the teacher. A teacher might set a goal for a team or an individual teacher, and the coach will work with them. Sometimes the teachers ask the coaches to go in and watch a lesson and then give them feedback in a non-judgmental way. Coaching can be in the form of professional development. So I just wanted you to kind of have this slide to show that these coaching cycles will look different for every person because they really are individualized. So we rolled out to staff in, I think it was October meeting, the new coaching cycle. And we said that we would have 8 touch points during this cycle, meaning that the coaches would meet with the teacher or the grade level or the content area 8 times, 8 touch points to plan what their goal is, how they're going to roll out their goal, how they're going to monitor it, and how they're going to decide if they've reached their goal or not. We had groups that decided to do goals together. For example, one group of specialists had a goal of coming up with a plan for a makerspace in the building. We had another teacher who wanted some assistance on how to personalize their lessons more than what they were doing. We had another teacher who had a goal of using more technology in their classroom. So we had all these different goals that we laid out on the table, and the coaches, we all assigned them to what really was their expertise. The participation is continuing. We've had cycle 1 has gone through. We're now into cycle 2, and then we'll go into cycle 3. Of course, with all the other responsibilities of the coaches, we can't have too many people being coached during a school year, but our goal is to have everyone coached within the next 3 years in one of these personalized coaching cycles. So I'm interested to see at the end of the cycles when we get the feedback from the teachers, what they felt worked, was it useful, what we can do to improve it in the future. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you. I know you've had the slide deck for a while. I included in your slide deck some of the roles of the coach, because they're not just coaching the teachers, they're doing other things like being on the committee for new curriculum materials, which we'll be talking about later on. And I also wanted to share with you some of the current coaching projects that the coaches are doing this year in addition to the coaching cycles. And I also wanted to give a lot of kudos to our coaches, because they're the ones that when we need something, we go to. For example, if we have a teacher out who is teaching a certain content area like technology, the technology coach has stepped in and she's now teaching 2 classes. Our math coach is teaching a math class because of the shortage of teachers. So they really do a lot for our district, and I just want to give them some kudos for that too. Any questions about the new coaching cycles?
I've got just a couple
Sure.
like logistical questions.
Yep.
And I'm sorry if I missed this. So to be a coach, like I know we've got that slide with the role, do you apply? Do the principals select the coaches?
No, they have to
Do you-
apply. They have to apply. It's posted with all the qualifications, and they have to apply for the position.
So people apply to be a coach, but then people sign up who want to be coached and need help?
Correct.
So about how many coaches, like you said, 20 people wanted to be coached.
Mm-hmm.
How many coaches do you have right now? Is it just the?
3. So we have the technology coach, the English language arts coach, and the math coach. So
And-
anyone who signed up
Sure.
for technology help, obviously we put
Yep.
with the technology coach and so on.
And the 20 teachers that wanted to be coached, are they from all 3 buildings?
Yes. Yeah, we had we were a little worried, like, are people going to say, oh, this is something extra? But, they all stepped up, and we're getting some great positive feedback. We're just kind of tweaking about how many cycles do we offer in a year. I mean, right now, we're trying to offer 3, but sometimes getting those 8 touch points in is, as you know, more difficult than it seems on paper. So we're going to meet after we finish the cycles and decide, should it be 2 cycles, 3 cycles, and so on. Yeah.
Right. So Tammy, one of the things I would add is, it's a really great project, because one of the things that we all need is feedback. And what teachers are really doing is seeking feedback from content experts, and it is helping them get better in their craft. And, I'm really proud of not just our coaches, but of our teachers for reaching out and saying, while we participate in the observation and feedback cycle with our administrators, sometimes we want to go beyond that structure. Sometimes we want to try something new. Sometimes we want to be more innovative than, I might be if I'm in a formal observation, right? I want to try to get better at what I'm doing. And teaching can be very isolating, right? So you're with kids on your own for the bulk of your day. And so having peers come in and help you think through problems of practice and say, listen, I want to try to teach this math concept in a different way because kids are having a hard time getting it, and I'm wondering if I can be creative and think about it differently, and having feedback and a thought partner to try to do that in different ways, and a facilitated discussion about what worked and what didn't is really the goal of this project, and I think it's really had some nice effects with our teachers. You'll hear me talk a little bit in my superintendent's report about some of the math work that we're doing and professional learning around that, and this goes hand in hand with that.
Gail, going forward, in the pilot, the teachers have volunteered. Going forward, will they still volunteer, or will there be some sort of prioritized list of who would benefit most?
Well, we have a little list that we are checking off who has volunteered, and we are hoping people will continue to volunteer, but if they don't, we'll be inviting them to be part of the cycle.
And will it still be about 20 to 25 teachers?
Yeah, it depends on, there's a capacity issue with how much time the coaches have to do this part, because like, for example, the ELA pilot took a lot of time from Jessica this year. So with that not there next year, she'll have some time opened up that maybe she can take on some more people. With the technology and the math coach having to teach classes this year, they didn't have quite as much time. So we're hoping as some of those things kind of back off, they'll have more time to have more people. But for this year, everyone who signed up to be coached, we were able to provide that coaching cycle this year.
And you said it was overall 3 buildings?
Yep.
And it just happened to work out that way? Will it be planned to be that way, so many per building going forward?
It just happened to work out that way, but we are hoping we get people from each building. We're hoping that the people who go through it this year will have had such a great experience that when we go back next year to gather people, those people will say, it wasn't extra. It was something that actually, this slide is perfect here, that it's not about adding on. It's teachers need to know that a coach's goal isn't to add to their workload, but to deepen the impact of their existing practice. So we're really hoping that message goes out, that it wasn't extra. It was useful, it was helpful, it was worth the time.
And when do they normally get together? I mean, is some of it's in class and
So that's
professional
between
development
the coach and the coachee. They decide, are they going to meet before school, after school, during school, within class, during planning period? They work on when those 8 touch points would be.
Okay. Sounds like it's going great.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And that came from that think tank of teachers from throughout the district. So that was just such a positive feedback piece that we got from that think tank, so.
Any other questions? Oh, Justin?
Oh, yeah. So you mentioned that they could get professional learning units, credits. And I was wondering, so that's a benefit for the teachers? They're going to be appropriately compensated, for their time?
Yeah, so they're called PLUs, Professional Learning Units,
Yeah.
and they need so many to renew their teacher certification. So as another benefit of, you get this coaching experience that is great, you also earn PLUs, Professional Learning Units, for your certification. So that has actually been another draw for people, especially those who are certifying in the next year or so.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
I had a quick question. So I noticed one of the coaches' name was one of the math interventionists at the elementary school, Mrs. McGonigal.
Oh, so yeah, so we have 3 main district coaches. At the elementary school, the math interventionists only serve as coaches like 1 day a week to help the teachers especially with the new rollout of the Bridges math program. They haven't been involved in this piece because they're pretty much math interventionists 4 days a week, and then they only coach that 1 day. So they don't have the time to do that piece as well.
So do these coaches, you were saying that they work with some of the students, do they pull out? Is that what you were saying?
None of these district coaches work with the students.
Okay,
They work with the teachers,
okay.
unless we have to have them teach a class because we're short of staff. Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll wrap it up here. I just want to say thank you to the coaches for providing these really important services. I think this is a wonderful opportunity, and for all the volunteers who have taken the initiative to improve the already wonderful work that they're doing, especially just seeing that the coaches really are taking the initiative not to pile on to the already incredible amount of work that they already are doing. And to hear that reiterated is really appreciated. And to know that these coaches are working one-on-one with these teachers to really individualize this plan and the structure for these educators is really a remarkable opportunity. So again, just a shout out to the incredible job that these coaches are doing. And I look forward to hearing more about how this program progresses.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Very well said. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you, Gail. Moving on, it's now time for open forum. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
Tammy, could we make a motion to change open forum to the actual, I just find open forum in the beginning of discussions of the other agenda items a little strange. Can we move open forum to be about the agenda item as we go through?
So when Alex and I meet to set the agenda, we can figure out where best to place open forum.
Yeah, I guess
So-
I'm just trying to understand
So
what
other
you're explaining.
districts put open forum, like, for example, when they get to the budget report, if there's somebody who would like to get up and speak from the public, they would speak about the budget report at that time.
I mean, during open forum, they have the opportunity to speak about any particular agenda item already. I think this just improves the overall flow of the meeting. That's
Right.
just my understanding.
So can I make a suggestion? So there is a policy in the school committee handbook that dictates the order of the meeting as well as when open forum is. I don't have that in front of me, but we can take a look at it, all right? And then we can get an answer to your question.
Okay. And then if we wanted to edit that, we'd have to edit the policy. So when Alex and I meet for the next agenda meeting, let's see if we can take a look at that policy, and then if we want, we'll move that to the policy subcommittee, and then we'll bring it back to the full committee.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So hearing no one for open forum, we're now going to move on to oral reports, starting with the school committee. Does anybody have a report to give? You do not, Alex? No, I don't. Jen, okay. All right. So no reports. I will just say that we did have our second budget workshop last Wednesday. And the main topics that we discussed last Wednesday were technology, facilities, transportation, and really looking at the overall funding about how the budget is going to be funded and what our request is that we're voting on tonight. And that was last Wednesday. So with that, we are on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tammy. So it has been a busy time in the Narragansett school system, and all of you received written reports in your packets, but I will give a couple of highlights about what's going on. So Pierre School just had a successful and wonderful play, James and the Giant Peach, and so it was truly awesome. And speaking of theater, so the elementary school play is this, I think it's next week, the 28th and the 29th, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The elementary play is always a highlight of the year, so they've been practicing hard, and so we're looking forward to that. You know, there have been some great arts outcomes, you know, throughout the year, and so we're really, that program, kind of K-12, has been amazing. Kind of shifting gears to sports, so the high school sports season wrapped up, and it was really exciting. A lot of championship contenders this year. Girls hockey took LaSalle to overtime and then lost in the hockey semifinals. Girls basketball, you know, did really well in Division III. Swim was highly successful, and we had a couple of track athletes do really well at states and at nationals. So the thing I wanted to highlight was we've been working hard on math. And so I wanted to highlight some of the work of our math teachers in thinking differently about mathematics. So we have a small group of math teachers, about 8 of them, that have been thinking hard and working in a book study with me on mathematics and how to think differently about teaching mathematics. And so it's called Building Thinking Classrooms in Math. And what they've been doing is reading this book and then going back to their classrooms and trying some of these techniques. And it has been really wonderful to see the expansion of their thinking and the expansion of their practice as they go forward with this. So one of the things that you're going to see on the agenda tonight is adding some different whiteboards and different furniture to one of the peer school classrooms. That's an outcome of their work, because one of the things that we learned in that book was, getting kids up and moving and thinking differently and getting active around mathematics and standing and thinking and grouping differently are all ways to improve math outcomes. So we're going to try that, and it's just an example, along with the coaching that you saw today, of the different ways that teachers are trying to think differently about instruction and try some new things. So I just wanted to highlight that in the report because they're doing a really terrific job. Finally, we've been working hard with the budget. We had our budget workshops, have made adjustments accordingly, according to kind of direction from the committee, and we will move forward after tonight to a meeting with the town council on March 27th, where we will present the full budget.
Any questions for Pete about his report? All right, thank you. All right, so we are moving on to consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve consent agenda items CA1B, CA1C, CA1D, CA2A, CA2B, and CA2C?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on any items? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. On to the budget report. Karen.
Good evening. Expenditures for the 8 months ended February 28, 2023 total $17,911,107, and that's 51.68% of our budget. Expenditures and encumbrances total $30,001,793, and that's 86.56% of our budget.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Karen? All right, so we're moving on to school committee business. Item number 1, is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration to approve the fiscal year 2024 budget in the amount of $36,256,122?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. So at this time, do any school committee members have any questions or any comments?
I do. I prepared some comments about this, and I do have some supplemental research that I'd like to give to the school committee members, just as I'm reading my comments. Okay, so, a major responsibility that comes during budget season is being fiscally responsible in spending. One thing I ask myself is, is every single child that goes to Narragansett schools getting what they need to reach their potential? And so this is the main theme of, why I felt compelled to write these notes. So I know, going through this is a huge learning requirement, and thank you to my peers and to Superintendent Cummings for, really educating me on this in my first budget cycle. I feel like we need to make sure that we're spending money on what the district must adhere to with requirements of RIDE and also education law, but we also must look to the needs of every student. I don't think that those are just words that are in the Rhode Island Charter. I think that those are words that we really have to think about, and then on top of that, be fiscally responsible for. In teaching, we're evaluated on the ability to provide instruction, provide safe physical, mental, social environments, and to create differentiation to each child and not think of them within the majority. After looking at the budget proposal in detail over the last few weeks, I believe we can do a bit better in serving the needs of the Narragansett students for the next year. In order to do that, I think we have to look a little bit deeper over costs over time and one-time costs. So if you look at the materials that I sent down to you, drilling down into the budget data and looking at the data posted on the RIDE website for 2022-23, our student population is dropping at a consistent rate. And currently, our district is spending over 82% of its budget on personnel. This is the highest among the state besides New Shoreham. Educating is a business to invest in people. That's not a negative thing. However, with that percentage, it doesn't leave a lot of room for facilities, safety, curriculum, technology, mental health supports, programs, et cetera. From my view, Narragansett does adjust teaching staff numbers each year according to the needs of the student in the classroom. But to date, I haven't seen much in adjusting administrative costs to reflect the same trends and balance as other districts have. So the data in front of you is how we currently staff administration. What I did was I looked at the RIDES data to see what their personnel cost was and indicated what their percentages are, and then also broke down what their differences in specifically districts that are at this pretty similar population size, student population size, some districts that are higher, and one district that's a little bit lower. Issues like this are extremely hard to bring up. I'm uncomfortable doing it. I'm a music teacher, and I can't tell you how many times music programs in the districts I have worked have been cut. This is in no way a reflection of individual work among any of the administration, teachers, and staff, but bringing these issues up now with the intention to look at it from all perspectives is important. And it is important to put the needs of the children first at this moment. So looking at that, I just, I want to propose that we think about a few things and to make a motion that we take a little bit more time with the budget. There are a few areas after looking at, what our goals were that I feel really need to be looked at. So one is the addition of a part-time CTE program director. The CTE program is one part of a revenue stream that we could be bringing in more. And without having somebody really fully dedicated, either as a part-time or full-time staff member, it's hard to bring in that year-to-year revenue stream. The curriculum director, I feel like this year of all years, we definitely need at least a 1.0, and that's something that we really shouldn't be cutting into. I feel that's a need for the students and the staff. We talked a little bit about a part-time or full-time mental health professional with certification to help in evaluation of students. One thing that I think we're really, really remiss in is that we don't have a full-time athletic director. And as we've seen with towns around us, there have been some incidents where, the kids have not been safe. And I feel as though, an AD in this town is really no different from an AD in a bigger town because they're dealing with pretty much the same amount of teams, same amount of scheduling, same amount of coaches. And I feel like, especially with certifications coming up to certify everybody on how to use an AED and all of these things, we really need to think harder about protecting and keeping our kids safe. In order to cover the costs above, I just feel like we need to talk a little bit more and creatively discuss how we're going to balance that out moving forward. So I move with these comments to consider a third budget meeting before we make a vote this evening.
So we're going to take comments from the rest of the school committee first, and then if you want to make a formal motion, we can do that. So I'd like to go first. So I agree with the first three things that you said, and that's about it. So I think we absolutely need to have a fiscally responsible budget. That's part of our job. 100%, I fully support this. I think it absolutely is extremely fiscally responsible for the taxpayers of Narragansett, which I am. I agree with your statement that we need to have a budget that meets the need of each and every child. 100% agree with that. I think this budget absolutely does that. I have no idea if this 82.2% of staffing is accurate or not. But what I would say is we want our budget to be 80-85% staffing. Like, that's what we want. If we want a budget that is for kids, we want to heavily invest in staff, in teachers, in coaches, in mental health staff, and administrators. You want that. You don't want to have a budget that is spending 30% on supplies and pencils and consumables, and like, you want it to go to staffing. So my first question, Pete, I don't, like, is 82.2%, is that like accurate? Like, I don't even know where this number came from, but like, for
Yep,
our
that's about right.
staffing, is it around 83%?
It's somewhere between 81 and 82%, roughly.
Okay, so
And
the numbers-
the RIDE data sometimes is slightly different for ways they calculate, but that's about right.
Okay, so that's good. So the number's accurate, about 82%. I think that's really good. I think that's where we should be investing the taxpayer dollars, is in staffing, in teachers and all those positions, support staff. As far as, I'm like super confused because I'm hearing you say like we should add stuff, like add a CTE person, increase the curriculum director, make a full-time athletic director, but then I'm hearing like you want to cut the budget. I'm also super concerned that you're launching like these ideas like March 15th. So Pete presented this budget in February. He said about 17 times, if you have any questions, you have any ideas, reach out, reach out, reach out. It's like you're launching ideas for the very first time on March 15th, on the night that we're about to vote. So like some of these ideas are like, they're not based in any context. So when you're talking about we've never cut administrators, have you sat down with Pete and asked him to explain that? Because over time, we had assistant principals at the elementary school and at the middle school. We cut those positions based on enrollment. We had an assistant superintendent when Diane and I first started. We cut that position. So we have made those cuts along the way. So it's not like we've kept the same level of admin staffing. Like when you're launching like, oh, we need a full-time athletic director, how do you know that? Like, how do you know that what the training is right now for our coaches on AED training and first aid and safety? Like, how do you know that? So I'm concerned by your comments, but I want to circle back to, I 100% support this budget. I 100% support the process that Pete has explained to us that starts in December, where principals and the PPS director and the facilities director are making their budget. Justin and I sit on the building committee that met, on the capital reserve committee that met. We look at every single long-term project to protect the assets of the districts. That's a very thoughtful facilities budget. We get updates all the time from Steve and Pete about safety and what are the safety improvements we're making at the building. What's the training that we have for staff? At the last budget workshop, we talked a lot about circling back to the number of mental health staff, and the 4 people that attended directed Pete to find a way to add that extra school psychologist for 1 year because we thought that that was important. So, and when you look at our overall increase in how we're going to fund it, it's being extremely responsible to the taxpayer. We do have a significant fund balance right now. We want to follow the recommendations from that joint resolution with the town council about X% for capital, X% for facilities, X% for operating, and we're doing that. And then when you look at our ask of the taxpayer, we're at about 1.3%, around $380,000, which is probably one of the lowest requests that I've seen in a long time. And when you look at where we sit with other districts, where in other districts nearby, the school budget accounts for 70%, 75%, we're a little over 50%. So the ask of the taxpayer is very, very small because it's a fiscally responsible budget. And we decrease staffing based on enrollment. Year after year, if you see that trend, you'll see we're cutting a second grade teacher or cutting a fourth grade teacher. So there's been cuts made for teachers based on enrollment. There's been cuts made to admin based on enrollment. So I'll pause there. in case anyone else has any comments, and then we get to circle back to Jen wants to make a formal motion, but I'll be quiet and see if anyone else has any comments.
I do also have a formal statement prepared, and I do want to just say, thank you. I do appreciate any added research and recommendations that may go into the benefit of all students. That being said, I do also 100% support this budget. I believe we must be fiscally responsible as well to look after and care for all students in Narragansett, and I believe we are doing that wholeheartedly. We do that by supporting the services, the teachers, the bus drivers, the custodial staff, every administrator, everyone who helps to make Narragansett everything it is, and ensures that our schools continue to run safely and that a high-quality education is continued to be provided. After the 2 budget workshops and the countless hours of answering questions, outlining every line-by-line item, and working with leaders in every school, I believe we have more than met that expectation. Now is not the time, in my opinion, to be making cuts when the greatest investment of our future is to that of our students in Narragansett. The budget outlined shows that we are making smart, fiscally responsible decisions with the use of the fund balance from the previous year to support the budget in 2024. The use of ESSER funds whenever we can, squeezing every nickel and dime out of them that we can and only ask from the town when what the state cannot provide. We have cut staff positions and worked people around to accommodate the change in student population in each of the 3 schools. I believe strongly that the 1.39% increase for the town's portion is a more than reasonable ask based on inflation rates alone, not even taking into consideration all of the measures we are taking to assist with academic recovery and to provide resources toward the benefit of the health and wellness of all students and staff. So again, I fully support the budget that is being proposed, and thank you everyone for their participation in the budget workshops.
Do any other members have any comments? Justin?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say I support this budget we're presenting currently tonight, as going through this entire process as well, as a member of the Technology Subcommittee, as a member of the Capital Reserve Committee, and the Building Committee. Is that? Sorry, is my? Okay, sorry. I speak closer. Like we have really gone through this budget and has made it as lean as possible with applying the best one of the best educations in the state. But Jennifer, I have a question about the material. I know this is going to go back to you. So you're showing that we've spent more on teachers, and one of the things I've always said is that
That number isn't teachers, that's personnel. That number is administration, teachers, and staff.
Okay.
So
and-
that's personnel. And in no way did I say we should be cutting teachers. What I was saying was when you have cost to cost year to year, and then next year we're going to get hit by the state not coming up with any kind of numbers funding for our special education, it's going to catch up to us. We can't keep fiscally being responsible, having as much as we do with specifically looking through, cutting teachers at this time of learning loss is not something that I would ever suggest. I'm a teacher. I get that. I think we need as many human-to-human interactions with the students. So, looking at things like technology, is it warranted? That kind of thing. But if you look at our administration costs, and this is a comment that I know is not going to be popular. I'm in education. I know that. But we have to look at the fine line. Our population is dropping pretty quickly. And if we keep having the attitude like, 1.3%, or next year 2.6%, so we don't have to tap into any more reserves because we're not going to get as much state aid, we're going to get ourselves into a problem. So just looking to adjust, giving an idea of a future creative way, and making room for things that are really needed right now. First of all, these things were asked prior to And also, some of these things were definitely brought up in meetings, budget meetings before. I missed the last budget meeting because I was ill and in the hospital, my apologies. But I know it's not a popular opinion. I didn't run for office to be popular. I ran for office to listen to the residents, and they're saying our administration costs are high. And they are. They're high. They're 82.2%. We absolutely can't cut any teachers. We absolutely can't cut a technology director. We can't cut any security. There's not much you can cut from school. But with a drastically decreasing student numbers because of our situation in Narragansett, if we don't want to be redistrict, we really kind of have to look at what we really need in administration and what our peers are using around the state that are around the same size or even larger than us and outperforming us. So it's definitely something that I think we need to start to look into. It's never good to use the word cuts, but in general, we have to think about our costs year to year. 82.2% is a lot.
82% is teachers and administrators. Like, I'm super confused. You
So,
keep saying
yeah.
82% of the budget. That doesn't make any sense at all. Like, 82%, when you take the superintendent, the 3 principals, and that's not 82% of the budget. That's teachers. So you're saying you don't want to cut teachers.
Yeah, you say
keep
you wanna
saying
cut this
82%. It's teachers
82%.
and admin.
I'm
We have
saying-
1 principal per building, 1 superintendent, 1 special ed director.
We don't have 1 principal per building. We have 3 dean of
A
students.
dean is not a principal.
It's still another position that we have to cost by cost every year fiscally be responsible for, while we have a drastic amount of decrease in our numbers. I think we can probably all agree Narragansett is a special place, but if we keep spending how we're spending, we're not going to be able to keep up with the changes, like the security and the technology and all of those things that are coming down, and to pay the wonderful teachers that we do have. I think we need to look at how to balance that and look at creative ways around that. That's all I'm saying. I know it's hard to be the person to get up and say something that's not of popular opinion, but there are many residents in this town that have voiced that we pay a lot per administration, considering there is a huge decrease in students.
So I haven't
So,
had one
well, hold
single
on.
person reach out to me in 14 years saying we have too many admin. Has anybody else heard from residents this year
No,
about
but-
we have too many admin?
I would
think there's a-
welcome
I think
these concerned residents to reach out to all of us, especially the superintendent, or even, anyone in the administrative office, to share that with the rest of the school committee. We're all very approachable, very open, very transparent. We have our emails, our contact information out there on the web. If there is all this talk going on, I welcome you to come to a meeting and speak during open forum, or to reach out to us during one of the budget workshops. It's very well outlined. And you and I have both echoed on Facebook and social media that it's open to the public, so please come in and engage in these conversations. I would love to verify a lot of these concerns, but again, I haven't heard them myself personally, and as Tammy has also echoed, neither has she. So,
So
it's sharing-
really quick, because I have not heard anything either. And I feel like we're beating around the bush a bit. There's an 82% number. What percentage of that is administrative staff? I know it. Do you know it?
Yes.
Okay. What is it?
Well, I don't have it right in front of me right now, but
5%. 5.5%.
No, we were up at 6.7. Per an email that we got for information.
So this is the information that was shared, so you guys can have that. That data is from UCOA, which is the Uniform Chart of Accounts from RIDE. That's from the 22-23 school year. And that is a selection of districts across the state in terms of, according to UCOA, the percentage of the school budget that is devoted to administration.
I just wonder, and again, thank you for, I don't know who's providing this information, but
For the purposes of the public watching, you all may want to
Oh.
share a little bit of that, but that is
Sure.
up to you all.
did you want to read through it?
Do you want to read it, Justin?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not going to go through the whole list. The whole list is about 20 towns, but I will go basically till Narragansett is included. Jamestown, 6.7%. North Smithfield, 6.6%. Exeter, West Greenwich, 6.3%. Narragansett's fourth with 5.9%. Portsmouth and Burrville is tied for 5.8%. You have a nice drop to 5.1 for Smithfield and Tiverton. South Kingston is 4.9. I guess I read the whole thing. But the lowest is Westerly with 4.2. So,
I think one perspective you have to take into consideration too, and again, we all have different perspectives, but I am the only person sitting on the school committee right now that has children in the school. And I've seen the learning loss, and I can see more transparently where the needs are and how COVID has affected this technology to teach and not human to human. And when you look at the budget of a small town and you think, how are we going to consistently move forward? We need teachers. We need the small classrooms. We have our classrooms are way smaller than some of these districts that are paying a lot less in administration costs, and they are outperforming us by a lot, and they have double the amount of students in their classroom. We have to look somewhere. There's certain things you can't take away from, right? Building costs, facilities, things that are required by law, special education specific to what we get every year, what students we educate. And at this time, I feel like, even though it's not of popular opinion, we have to look towards the future as to how we're going to start to balance that with our reduced population. So these are just my ideas. I knew it wasn't going to probably be received as popular opinion, but I do feel like it was the duty of me taking the oath of really thinking about every child and how every child is going to reach their potential.
So once again, I just don't understand what you're asking. You've presented a case to cut administrative staff.
I presented a case to discuss in a third budget meeting about how to best balance so that as we move toward for the future, we're setting up less cost every year as our costs. We have costs that are outright one-time costs, and then we have costs that are every year that increase due to contractual obligations or whatever it might be. And so I think if we keep going along this trend and not really, am I happy about it? No, I'm an educator. I wish there was all the money in the world. Trust me. But I don't think it's fiscally responsible not to bring up having a balance of what could be cut in a budget that won't affect learning loss, and with the reduction, the huge reduction in student population year after year.
So once again, we have a budget of 1.39% asking for an increase. We have the lowest, as far as I'm aware, ask of an increased budget for the state of Rhode Island. I do not think there's another low one. We have kept that consistently for years of either having one of the lowest or one of the lowest. We do have some hurdles in front of us, some well-known hurdles that are not necessarily due to the schools, but due to outside forces of how the state is going to redo reimbursement in the future for under free and reduced lunches. What is it? Yeah. Calculations from that, and potentially more of a decrease in students as we've been successfully contracting for years. So, but go to what you've given us as a thing. You asked to look, and then you proposed increasing positions. You've asked for a cut, and you proposed increasing. So I'm just confused.
Right, at the end of my statement, I said, I think we need to go back, and I would like to make a motion, but I'm not doing that now because it's comment time, that we have a third budget meeting, which was originally scheduled, possibly option there, so we can discuss this. So after getting all of the information, you know, from this perspective, which is mine, having to be a school committee member and a teacher and a parent, I feel as though we're not spending the money to meet every child's potential right now. I feel like it needs to be redistributed, like you would budget at your house, right? When costs go up in one area and then you have to pull back in another area. Do I like having these discussions? No, but in Narragansett, we are faced with the first grade class has like 55 students in it. A couple years ago, it had like 70 or 80. You know, I'm not proposing that we cut teachers. There's learning loss. I'm a teacher. I get that. I'm in the schools every day. But I'm proposing that we creatively go and we look to see what we're spending and to see where it can come from, because next year we probably are not going to get the state aid and we're going to be even further behind, and you're going to have an even bigger ask and you're going to have even more. There are certain things that I do think our district is missing that I think would meet the needs a little bit more. We had that discussion during the budget meeting. We talked about extra staff for mental health. We've had some incidents in the school that really are kind of scary. I mean, we need some more mental health staff. Sometimes with bringing upon immediate needs, you have to lessen, whether it's, I'm not saying we have to lessen now specifically, but planning for down the road when we know responsibility-wise, we are decreasing in numbers. We know that, and we know that's not just for this year. We know that's going to be ongoing for a while.
So you're proposing on
hold on.
March 15th, we start all over again. Let's just go out of the box, let's be creative. You don't even have one single suggestion for a cut. Like, we've had the budget since February, and there hasn't been one, like, we need to cut this position, and now it's, let's think out of the box. Let's add these positions, let's try to bring it down, let's start from scratch. I'm not at all interested in doing that on March 15th.
I don't even know what you're asking at this point. I really don't. I'm being completely honest.
I'm asking to have another discussion
About what?
about planning for,
No. I'm sorry, but I don't want you to, I know you've explained it. I understand and I agree. We have problems with the district going forward in terms of schools and the students and all that. I understand. We have items in these budgets. We have line items and they have prices attached. So when we go through budget season, we look at every single item and we go through and we cross it out, we discuss it, we do it. Every single item. You want to do, what part of the budget do you want to re-review where you think we need to redo this?
I mean, I think that's the question for the superintendent. You know, what can possibly go to rebalance? I mean, you know, I know it's not of popular opinion to have another meeting, but the fact of the matter is, we were given a lot of information about a lot of experts who are heroes to our kids every day. This has nothing to do with job performance or anything like that. I know it's not a likable thing that I'm saying, but I feel as though to be fiscally responsible, we need to have these conversations.
What's the conversation?
The conversation is, let's look at this. I mean,
What are we looking at? Are we cutting personnel?
I think we might have to look
Are we
at.
cutting administrative personnel? Are we cutting special
I
ed
think we
personnel?
need
Are we
to
cutting?
ask the superintendent that. That's not something of my
So-
recommendation
We're-
that can happen.
You're aware that Peter Cummings has cut 2 positions this year, 2.2 positions? And I believe, you have a chart somewhere, I think I've seen it, where it goes through the years of like the dozens of positions we have cut as the school's contracted, right?
So
This
what
is
I
already
would-
part of the budget is what I'm getting at. We have already done a personnel review where we took a hard look at what we can and have to reduce due to our situation.
Right, so what I would say, and I appreciate Jen's suggestion on, and it is what we try to do, which is to be forward-thinking and to anticipate what are our staffing needs going to be given the reduction in student population that we have over time. As Tammy referenced, we have reduced administrative staff at the building level from assistant principals to deans. You know, that is a pretty significant savings in terms of salary to the district as we go forward. You know, a couple of things. So I agree with and you know, welcome the suggestions around athletic directors and CPE. One of the reasons that we have an assistant principal at the high school is that is part of his responsibilities, is to oversee and do exactly what you're saying is part of that is around the CTE. And we hired the person in that position for exactly that skill set. You know,
And not to interrupt you, Peter, but we've been getting increasing amounts of CT students since I've been here, essentially.
we have been, and they're excellent programs. You know, one of the things that we
Started a new one too, the pipe.
need to really keep in mind when you think about administrative staff is one, proportionally compared to districts who are our relative size, you know, the cost of the administration staff as a percentage of the budget is lower than many, either by percentage or by dollars spent. Now, what I would agree with is, and Jen is exactly right, is that we are going to have to make staffing adjustments as time goes forward. What I would also say is that we have that in mind when we design the budget starting in November. And so right now, we are pretty lean in terms of our administrative staff. So for example, even though on paper it says we have an assistant director of special education, underneath that umbrella is being the director of the preschool, being director of the interventions K-12, of running the IEP meetings at the elementary school and at the middle school. And so sometimes our titles in Narragansett don't quite cover the scope of the position. And so, for example, in many districts, you have a separate director of preschool. That's a whole separate salary and a whole separate benefit, right? And so we try to consolidate positions whenever we can. That being said, you know, it is something that we're always looking at, and it is something that we did look at as we go forward. And so, for example, there may come a time where a school is so small where you don't need 2 adults in the building in case of emergency. One of the reasons for the dean position is that we want to make sure, A, parents are getting communication and students are getting the care and the intervention that they need. Remember that the principal, along with kind of caring for kids and kind of leaving the building and is also supervising everyone. And so in each one of our buildings, the supervision rate of teacher per administrator is much higher than what we find in other districts. So our administrators are having way more direct reports and doing more than other districts in terms of their observations and their feedback to teachers. One of the reasons that the coaching cycle is so powerful is that it's a peer-to-peer piece, because our administrators, while they are doing everything that they need to do to supervise teachers, have such a large caseload that they are not always able to do those special projects with teachers, because we have kind of reduced that supervisory staff over time. What I would say is, again, full-time AD would love that, right? And that is something that, if that's something that the committee wants to consider, we can look at, you know, available resources to do that. It's not something that I feel right now we need to add to the budget, but we can certainly make some adjustments to that over time if that's something the committee wants to consider. You know, finally, what I would say is, you know, overall, when we design the budget, we work in partnership with the town to be as fiscally responsible as we can possibly be. And so we are very conscious of the role the schools play in the community, right? We want to make sure that we have vibrant and healthy schools and are meeting the desires and the needs of our families. One of the things that our families have said to us over and over again is that they really value reasonable class sizes, right? Small and reasonable class sizes. So that is someplace where we put a lot of resources, right? If the committee came to me and said, I want you to cut $1 million from the budget, right? We can do it. I am not sure that the community would be happy with the ripple effect of making those cuts, right? The parents in the community would be happy with that because that would have a significant impact on the teaching and learning experiences that happen every day. However, right, what I would say is over time, the loss in population that is just a circumstance of the cost of housing in Narragansett will continue to have an effect. And down the road, there will be further cuts as those populations get smaller. I would tell you right now, at the elementary school, I do not believe that it would be good for children or good for families not to have another adult and a dean of students there in order to support safety, to be able to supervise the playground, to be in the cafeteria, to do all the things that need to happen when you're looking at little ones, right? The role of the dean of students at the middle school is, again, equally important, right? So we need to have that supervision in hallways. One of the things that concerns our parents quite a bit is, negative student-to-student interaction. Why, at this time, when students are struggling with behaviors related to mental health, I would not feel comfortable reducing the level of support that teachers have to maintain a safe and orderly classroom environment, right? When we are still able to do so and have a very reasonable and quite honestly low financial ask of the town in order to maintain that currently. If, and this is a consideration for future committees, we come to a fiscal standpoint and says we now need to make some choices because in order to have a fiscally responsible budget, we're going to need to make some cuts, and those cuts will include the whole organization, right? So I think you will see over time, if you were to trace our staffing levels, that we have proportionally reduced administration as we have reduced instructional staff, and we've had to also reduce support staff to do that. So we've got a secretary out of every building over the last 3 years. We've reduced staff in operations. We've reduced staff in transportation. So those staffing cuts have happened over time. And so, Jen, I appreciate the concept of we have to be fiscally responsible and aware of the choices that we are making. What I would say is I think that we've done that pretty well. I think that the data, the fiscal data that we look at RIDE, when we look at sector data, would reflect that we are not out of line with other districts of our size, right? And what I would also say is you are exactly right that we have harder conversations to come and that we need to be thoughtful about that going forward. And I kind of welcome those conversations going forward. At the same time, being really thoughtful about what are the needs of children and families in this community and the supports that they need, right, going forward. And I think the addition of the school psychologist in this budget is a perfect example of that, right? So that is an identified need that we know that we need. We have identified resources to support that need without any increase to the budget. And those are the kind of thoughtful additions and thoughtful work that we're going to need to do going forward in order to maintain services and be responsive to reductions in population.
So for me, I don't want to add anything to the budget tonight. I don't want to add more time for an athletic director. And for me, the safety and the well-being and social emotional needs of the children are my priority. Deans are not administrators. They can't do teacher evals. They can't do many things that an administrator can do, but they care for our children. They care for their social emotional well-being. They make connections. They make partnerships with families. I think we should prioritize safety and social emotional learning, so I support the dean positions.
I just have one last comment. You know, being a teacher in a district where I see upwards past 30 kids in my class, there is some responsibility on the teacher to be able to handle those things and to have the luxury in Narragansett to have, 15 students in a class with all of the supports that you have is one thing that's why I live in Narragansett right now, because I think that that's a good thing. But when you look down the road, it really does make me nervous to think we don't have the money coming forward with how quickly it's reducing to keep sustaining that. So I think little by little, we really need to go to some creative ways of thinking because, once we possibly start talking about redistricting, I don't think that's going to be a popular thing either. But, there are some things, I think that we can do. 15 students to a class, I wish I had that luxury. I do think that some of that responsibility can go more on the teachers. Granted, we're coming out of COVID, so, all bets are off. I agree with you, Pete, but this intention, like I said originally in my remarks, was to get us to start thinking creatively because we can't keep continuing along the road. And I do think that there are some needs. And hopefully, when presented to the town council, they'll agree with the percentage, but they may not. So I appreciate you letting me speak. It was a hard thing for me to do. And I did it for the intention of, looking forward in the best interest of hitting the needs of every student. Education is fluid now. It's totally different than it was 5 years ago. And we really have to keep our eye on that as being an educator here and also a parent of 2 kids that are in education, right? Public education right now. So thank you.
So any other comments or questions before we either entertain other alternate motions? Any other discussion before we figure out next steps?
Could you repeat what the motion was? Because at this point, I don't
Sure.
remember it.
So
I didn't make a motion. It wasn't time. And so after discussion,
Yep, so right now, the only motion is to approve the budget, but at this time, if any school committee member wants to make an amended motion, you can do so at this time, and then if it gets moved, then we'll take a formal vote and take it from there. Is that, so I'm looking at parliamentarian. So we have a motion on the floor. If a school committee member wants to make another motion, can you explain that, just so everybody?
Yeah, the amendment would be stated, and then there'd be a vote on the addition of the amendment. If that passes, then the motion as amended is again voted on. So it's a 2-vote process.
Okay.
1 vote on whether we want the amendment, and the second vote if the amendment becomes part of the motion.
So if a member wants to make a motion, they can say, I'd like to make a motion, and then they say it, and then the same process of we get a second, and then discuss and vote?
Right, in terms of amending the present motion.
Yes.
Yeah.
So at this time, would anyone like to make an amended motion? Jen, did you want to make an amended motion?
no, after the discussion, I feel as though it's not the want of the majority of the committee, and I respect that at this time, so I do not want to make an amended, a motion
Okay.
to change anything.
Right. Any other comments or questions then? The motion that's on the floor, I'll read that one more time. So there's a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration to approve the fiscal year 2024 budget in the amount of $36,256,122. So that was already moved and already seconded. So is there any more discussion from anyone before we take a vote on this motion?
Just one comment that I've always found over the years, that our budget process is very thorough and very comprehensive. And the workshops where we hear from all the administrators and all the department heads provides that opportunity for them to let us know of their needs and if their needs are being met, or if, and Tammy always asks if there's anything else that they would like to put on their wish list, and it's always seriously considered. But most of all, I think the budget is always a reflection of our strategic plan, and the budget is a reflection of those goals and objectives that we have set forth in the strategic plan. And I think this budget supports those efforts for this coming year.
Any other comments or questions before we vote?
I just would like to comment about my support for this budget. I think this is one of the best budgets we have put forth, at least in my tenure on the school committee here. A significant low ask of 1.34%, 1.39%, especially in an era of inflation, especially in an era where we still have a lot of things going on at the schools. It's a testament how well we've upkept our buildings, that we do not have to we can focus on improvements. A lot of districts are struggling just to maintain functionality. We've also, throughout the years, we've done a good job reducing staff. This is also present in that budget, while keeping the variety of classrooms available for students through different topics and subjects. We, as a committee, and I think, and as a town as large, and the town council knows, because we've been in talks with them over the years, of what exactly is coming down the line. And when that comes, these are yearly budgets, and they will be processed on a yearly basis. So we will have to look at that. This isn't pushing it off, because every year we look at this. We thought we would be dealing with the reduced cost from free and reduced lunches and how the state calculates that for the last 2 or 3 years at this point. Maybe the state will reevaluate that and are positive, or we don't know. We don't have control of that. This budget lays out the facts of this year well, and of the needs of this, what we anticipate is going to happen next year. I approve of it, and thank you, Tammy.
The last thing I'll say is I do appreciate the dialogue, the transparency, and the willingness of this school committee and the superintendent to have this conversation. And just, revisiting the concept that we are all up here working for the benefit of all students in Narragansett. And, just as a reminder that, and I think we've done a pretty good job at always thinking ahead. In the last budget workshop alone, Pete reminded us about a lot of the decisions that we were making in the budget would have long-term repercussions or benefits, for that matter. So again, I appreciate the dialogue and the willingness to have this conversation, and really all the work all around. Thank you.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor to approve the budget. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes 5-0. And before we do the next one, I just want to say a thank you to Dr. Cummings for all of your work on this budget since November, and everyone that's here in this room as well. Karen was a big part of this, Steve in facilities, Dr. Denton with special services, Gail with all the curriculum work, the 3 principals. This was a team effort that you have worked extremely hard on since November, really looking at every line item, and I 100% believe this is a fiscally responsible budget to the taxpayers. 100%, this budget will meet the needs of each and every child, and it puts kids first. And I like how Diane referenced the strategic plan, because if you make every decision putting children first, putting their academic needs, their safety, their security, their social emotional well-being tied to the strategic plan, it all comes together, and you did a great job. So thank you for all of your work on this since last November. All right, so we're going to go on to item number 2. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the Narragansett High School field trip to take place in April 2024?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion.
I'd like to welcome up Dan Healy. So Dan, as you know, is our esteemed band director for our middle school and our high school, and has really invigorated the program with some, kind of forward thinking. One of the things that Dan has created is kind of a trip cycle where kids go every 3 years. They're going to different places, so all students get to experience all different trips along the way. I think a lot of kids would be really happy to be on that Disney Twice cycle. And so, with that, I'll hand it over to Dan, and he can talk a little bit about their proposed trip to the music festival in Florida next April.
Next April vacation. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. So you may notice in your packet that what you have are not exactly quotes. We're still too far away for any travel companies to provide exact quotes, but what they have provided for us is an approximation based on tours they put together this year. They stress that just like everything else, travel prices are in flux, but they think they can get within, you'd say, $100-ish in either direction of the quotes they've provided. Our preferred travel company is Suburban Tours. We have a longstanding tradition of working with them dating back to our first New York City trip in 2016. They also put together our Disney trip in 2019 and helped us with our New York City trip last year. Some of the basics of the trip is that we're looking at a 5-day structure of the trip where we would leave very early in the morning. Last time our call time for the buses was about 3 a.m., so a little bit of a stretch, but leaving, our travel company wants to keep open the opportunity to pick between between Boston or Providence for cheapest flights. As soon as we have approval within a 12-month window, they'll start hunting for the best airfare they can find. We're looking at spending 4 nights at an off-property hotel close to Disney. We did that last year. It was in 2019. It was very successful, provided a little bit of separation from the park, and allowed us to kind of keep a closer eye on the students. In addition to the off-property, we also made sure that every travel package includes nighttime security, which is basically a single security guard who comes and monitors our hallways to make sure no one's leaving their room. Each day of the tour, we would have breakfast included daily as like a hotel continental breakfast, nothing fancy. And on the other, a second meal would be offered. One day would be a group dinner of sorts. They mentioned a restaurant like Bubba Gump's or something like that, something very Disney. And on the other days, it would be a park pass for lunch. So students would be on their own for 1 meal per day and snacks. The trip includes 1 day in each of the Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and Animal Kingdom, and then 1 day in Universal Studio. And as a part of the performance package, our band and chorus will each do an educational workshop. Last time, to give you an idea of what that included, the band was called away from Epcot on our day in Epcot. We gathered in a Disney recording studio with a Disney, a professional musician, one of their music producers. Students were given the soundtrack to The Lion King in an hour to rehearse it with the producer. I was kind of on the sideline for this. And then they recorded scenes from Lion King and synced it up with actual scenes. So they kind of got a glimpse at what it's like to record in a studio as a studio musician. We are looking at 1 chaperone per 12 students so that we're within the school committee guidelines. And I believe that's it for details. Knowing that we don't have an exact quote, I just wanted to give you the basics of the trip. I will be not around in the month of April, where my wife and I are expecting our first. So Peter was good enough to put this a little bit earlier on the school committee agenda so we could take care of it. So do you have any questions for me?
I just have one comment, being a music teacher. I think that this is over and beyond any music teacher task. And I'm proud that my children will be going through the Narragansett music program. thank you for going above and beyond for these kids. To have an experience like this, especially if you're a music kid, is it's life-changing. So I commend you and Sarah and everybody else who's probably helped you on all of this organizational information. My only question would be, though, to Pete, is that technically, does this kind of fall outside of field trip because it's not during the school?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, so great question. So the kind of legislation that you're referring to are for field trips during the school day that are curriculum-based, okay? This is outside of the school day while school is not in session. Given that, what Dan and the music department does is that they do lots of fundraisers, and they make sure that any child that wants to go is able to go.
Yes, we provided, last time I believe we provided 2 students with full scholarships for the trip, and then several partials. We've started up again after a hiatus our soup and cookie dough fundraiser, which in 2019, I think we sold, it's funny, but I think we sold close to $30,000 worth, and then it was we got about $15,000 in profit. A mattress fundraiser, and anything else that comes along, we're all ears.
Well, I was about to ask, how successful have you been at fundraising, but that answered my question.
They're not all that great, but
But again, let me start off by saying congratulations. Mr. Healy's going to be a father. I can't believe it. And, again, I know you've, since the start of all this, quite frankly, and I know a lot of these opportunities was something you've always envisioned for students in Narragansett, and to see it come full circle and to be offered is just really incredible, and just really remarkable for these students to have this opportunity to take everything that they're learning and really push the limits here and really go out into the world and share this joy for music and share it and really take this opportunity to learn and grow. And, thank you for bringing this to us and sharing this with us. I guess one other question I had, because everything else is so very well outlined here, is the transportation to and from the airport. I see on here is not included. Do we provide transportation to the airport, or do they have to drive
we'll
themselves?
certainly make sure that that's
Okay.
included.
Yep.
Again, I think what the companies have provided us are essentially other schools' packages from this year. So ours will have slightly different details, but they weren't willing to put it in writing for us 14 months out. It's just the nature of the world we're living in right now, I think.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you for presenting this to us. And, I know you had shared this initiative when I was in school. I only wish that times were different and we had the same opportunity. So I'm really happy that the students now can share in this enjoyment. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
And I echo everyone else's comments. This is going to be kind of like a trip of a lifetime for their high school career that they'll remember that. So I'm really excited to support this. And I really appreciate you coming to the school committee so early. I think that's super important that this gave us time to ask questions, discuss, take a formal vote before you are too far along the road in like fundraising and like waiting to the last minute, and then people are concerned and don't want to approve the trip. And now the kids have already been told, they've been fundraising. So we appreciate you coming this far ahead. That's great.
We're trying to tighten those things up as we get into the trip rotation that Peter referenced earlier.
And it makes it easier once you have done the trip before, then you can, if we had questions, you can say, well, last time, this is what happened and all that, so. Any other, Diane?
Are the performances judged as part of the festival, or is this more of an
We are
educational?
doing a non-adjudicated performance this year, so we'll be doing a concert in Disney Springs. And the festival it's essentially an exercise in sight reading. Our adjudicated festivals, every year we do the state festivals for RIMIA for both band and chorus. We're getting jazz band back into those as well. And we also, on our New York years, and actually this year we're traveling to Boston over April break as well, during the festivals of music. So most of our trips are adjudicated. Disney is not. Different experience.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Just to say, I like everyone else, I'm going to keep it short. appreciate this. This looks like a very fun trip for everyone.
Great.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
So we are on for item number 3. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration to approve the purchase of furniture for room N7 at the Pierce School from School Outfitters in the amount of $11,184.77?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
So on this one, right, Steve and I are going to tag team this one a little bit. So you heard me speak earlier in my superintendent's report about the group of math teachers that is thinking about how to do math differently. So one of the basic tenets from research, and the research is amazing. So this very well-known professor went very deep in researching mathematics. And one of the delights of the book is that he really explored not just the pedagogy of mathematics, but what are the surroundings and what are students saying and what are the different ways and behaviors that students exhibit positive learning in mathematics. One of the findings of this research was that environment matters. And one of the ways that this researcher really showed convincingly was that when you get students up out of their seats, when you get them working with whiteboards, when you get them working in small groups and thinking through out loud of their problems, their math scores improve dramatically. And so just sitting kind of obediently in rows, kind of mimicking what the teacher is doing is what we're trying to get away from. That does not lead to thoughtful math discourse, nor does it lead to kind of deep thinking in mathematics. So to Steve's great credit, I brought this problem to Steve and I said, Steve, how can we think differently about what our math classrooms look like, how they can be set up differently, how students, and I kind of gave him a summary of the research. And Steve, to his great credit, said, well, let's think differently about this. Took a look at one of our classrooms in the middle school, Katie Chapman's classroom, who does 7th and 8th grade. She is willing to kind of experiment with some of the different structures that we're gonna talk about tonight. And so this is gonna be a pilot classroom in teaching of mathematics, and if successful, we'll be able to replicate it in other areas of the district.
Good evening. So we found it. It's a whiteboard desk. You may or may not have a photo of them. They can be used individually. They can be used as collaborative learning. They're whiteboard tops, so they can do the work on the top of their desks with rolling chairs so that it's more comfortable. And this is for the furnishing portion of it. The rest of the room, we're going to do whiteboard wallpaper on the walls so that the whole wall is whiteboard, so they can stand and do work and learn in this fashion. So that'll be coming in the future. Some of these items are longer lead times to get.
Is this brand new, a whiteboard table, or is it just new to us?
They're new styles. The furniture tends to be more modern and more usable for students, adjustable height.
I mean, the idea of actually writing on the table.
Yeah, so you can.
I mean, we used to get in trouble for doing that.
Right,
Yeah.
you used to, not in a math classroom. though.
It's very interesting. I'd love to see that room when it's done with the whiteboard walls, too.
I will
so.
take photos as soon as
Yeah.
we're done with it. The whiteboard walls will happen in the summertime.
Yeah.
I don't want to disrupt our class.
Makes sense.
I'd also be interested in hearing how this teacher develops a curriculum or a course involving these whiteboard tables. It seems awfully fun, I kind of want to doodle on it myself, but it's really wonderful to see the advancements, the creative advancements in technology and, the new ways of thinking, the lessons learned, that they're, just a simple environment can help to foster a creative and stronger ways of thinking and processing information that's being taught. One thing I also would like to and appreciate is the fact that it looks like the cost of these items is all 50% off too. So not only is this, and actually, I'm bouncing all over the place here, but I was wondering if you could, or maybe Pete could just give a sound bite on the, where is it? The Massachusetts Higher Education Consortium contract, which I believe we have already approved and signed, but if you could just give a sound bite.
So within our school department purchasing policy, there are such things known as master price agreements. And these master price agreements are often sponsored by states where they pre-negotiate contracts at the lowest possible price in order for public entities such as school districts to be able to purchase from them, because they get better purchasing power when they make it available to more entities. Often, someplace like Massachusetts or Rhode Island or Connecticut will make their master price agreement available to public entities beyond the borders of their state. This is one of those, and so it fits within our purchasing policy to be able to use that. It is a good price. Steve is very thorough in terms of checking the different master price agreements. Karen kind of, they're a check and balance with one another in terms of kind of looking at all the possibilities. And again, there are a couple of different companies that make these. This is probably the most economical one for what we need that also meets the needs of the learning environment.
Any idea what the delivery time might be if we approve tonight?
The paperwork says 2 to 6 weeks. I'm hearing 12 weeks at what the actual is.
Okay.
I had a quick question. So I see that the tables are adjustable in height, but I don't see that the chairs are, which, this sounds really, really silly, but, to fit the need of every child, especially in a middle school, it's horrible for their backs if they're can't touch the ground, or, if they're too big or too small. Can you order these in different sizes, or?
They're different size chairs. We can't, the plan was to do the majority of the average size chair, which is 18 inches, and then a few smaller ones.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are some people that just don't grow into their bodies,
Right.
like me.
So they make a 16-inch chair that's, that's the plan, so.
Annette? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just, Steve, this looks fine. I'm actually super interested in like the whole writing everywhere thing as well. When you start adding this stuff, do we have to start considering replacement costs right away? Because I don't know how long these things will last.
We're going to have to see on these.
Okay. They're cheap enough that I'm not too worried
So
about
I
putting it
went
into
to
a
the
plan.
actual Massachusetts Higher Education Consortium had a trade show this year, and this is one of the places that I saw this equipment. Every vendor was there. This, in my opinion, was the better one of the bunch.
Perfect. Yeah, no, the fact you were able to get there and actually see it is huge. So thank you again, and thank you for doing all this due diligence.
And it looks like there's a 10, 15-year warranty on them too, just saying.
is?
So it's
Oh,
right there in the fine print. So, maybe after 14 years, or so, we can relook at that again.
I also want to commend our superintendent for leading a book study with the teachers, and for the teachers to joining that too. I think that's really interesting that you're always forward-thinking and bringing to the district some new and innovative ideas, but I like how that's tied to research. But I think that's really cool that instead of the principal leading the book study, that the superintendent did. I think that's really cool.
And I've been learning a lot, and certainly as a former English teacher, I've been had my math eyes opened, so it's been great.
Well, thank you for doing that. All right, any other comments or questions before we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, on to item number 4. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration for the purchase of ELA materials for grades K to 6 in the total amount of $73,079.56?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Great, so I'll invite up Gail and Jessica, and, just as a reminder, you've heard me talk several times about the high-quality curriculum legislation that has come from RIDE. And so our choices of the curriculum resource that we are able to select is pretty limited in terms of they have to be, quote-unquote, in the green from ed reports. So RIDE has kind of seeded the vetting of materials to ed reports who have kind of a certain criterion that they use. We are also kind of going through the right to read training, which is very phonics and kind of syllabic and science of reading training at the same time as we use these. I will tell you, we had great success here with the Teachers College Reading and Writing Program. The workshop model has been really great for us, and we're not going to lose the pedagogy that goes with that. So one of the things that I would emphasize, and that we've talked with teachers about, and I know Jessica and Gail believe in, is that a resource is not the curriculum, right? The curriculum is really that interaction and how we work with students over time. But the resource is an important part of it. And so given the limited choices we had, they went into a very deep dive. And with that, I'll pass the baton to them to talk through that a little bit.
Okay, great. So once again, this is Jessica LaValle, and she is the district ELA coach, and she has been my partner in leading this pilot effort that is almost at a year mark now. We started last spring. So as Dr. Cummings said, which is what this slide is all about, the why we need to look at new curriculum materials, it has to do with legislature. And the ed reports that Dr. Cummings mentioned is where we came up with the first swipe of materials that we looked at that were in the green. Let's talk a little bit about the process. It's a very formal, intense process. So RIDE has cohorts where they teach districts how to go through the curriculum process, which is curriculum selection process, which is much different than it was even 5 years ago. I have attended 2 of those cohorts and have used the process for mathematics and for English Language Arts 9-12. So when we did it for ELK 6 now, we replicated the process that RIDE taught us during those cohorts, which is we form a district committee of teachers, administrators in this particular curriculum area, reading consultants, and special educators, K-6. So we had representation from every grade level who is involved in this process in ELA was part of this, this team. Jessica and I went through ed reports, selected the materials that were in the green. We got vendor samples. We convened the committee where we did a first swipe of the vendor samples. The people on the committee had the opportunity to give us feedback on which of those samples we wanted to do a deeper dive on. We had 6 vendor presentations where it was at least an hour-long presentation where the vendor went through the different components of the materials. From those 6 vendor presentations, we winnowed it down to 4 that we would do a full-blown pilot on. And full-blown pilot means we looked at the ed reports. I'll just show you one of them, actually. We looked at the ed reports criteria to see how they did. We looked at the actual materials. We had additional vendor trainings. We did pilot lessons where Jessica helped the teachers plan, and 2 teachers piloted the same lesson so that they could give feedback on, how was the teacher usability of the materials? What was the differentiation? Did the materials have a diverse cadre of authors and main characters? Was the science of reading addressed? Was phonics addressed? How was the text complexity and so on? We got feedback from the teachers. We got feedback from the students. Then we winnowed it down to 2. From those 2, the last 2 vendors, we actually went and visited school departments that were using them. We visited Jamestown, West Warwick, East Greenwich, and Westerly, I believe, to actually have the teachers go into the classroom, see the materials in use, talk to the teachers, and so on. Then we convened the teachers, and we got their feedback, and these are the results of their feedback. The 4 that we winnowed it down to were the Savis product, which is what we currently use for 8, 12 now, 7, 12 really starting next year, ARC, EL, and CKLA. From those 4, we winnowed it down to EL, and our final winnow was to amplify CKLA. I do have the materials on the tables back there if you're interested in looking at them. So we are bringing this to you. We've already met with Dr. Cummings, Jess and I, and the principals to go over the materials again, and we are recommending that CKLA be purchased for K-5. Our 6th grade teachers have recommended that they go with what the rest of the district is doing, which is a Savis product. So Savis would be for 6-12. So we'd have a K-5 and then a 6-12 product.
So what I would just add to what Gail is saying is that what we found is that most resources have a hard break because in most, between grades 5 and 6. So, in most districts, the 5th grade is included in the elementary level. And so 6th grade is considered middle school, so they structure their materials to be K-5 and then 6-12, thus the change for us.
Yeah, and one thing we've realized going through this process is no set of curriculum materials does 100% of what we want. We've banged our heads against the walls about that multiple times. And that's why we have professional development, and that's why we have Curriculum Academy, and that's why we have curriculum coaches, because there are going to be parts that we're going to say, we need to beef this up, or we need to add this, or there are parts of the Calkins work that we used that was really, really good. I mean, their writing program, excellent. So that's why we know that the work isn't just you buy the materials and off you go. We're going to have to be doing a lot of professional development, deep dives into what's great about it, what do we need to add to, what do we need to supplement, and so on. I do want to mention that there are other districts in Rhode Island and near us, our fellow educators in Connecticut and Massachusetts that do use CKLA, so it's not like we are the only district using CKLA, and that we do want to give our teachers as much professional development as we can. So we, if the committee approves the materials, we're going to have some professional development for them in June before they go off for the summer, again in August, and then continued professional development throughout the year, either with the vendor or with Jessica as our coach. I also wanted to mention that we are planning on using our ESSER funds to pay for this, which is, I think Alex mentioned that we're really trying to use those funds, every penny to the best of our abilities. And that the quote that I have in front of you today, the good news is it might be less than that when we really know exactly how many students we're going to have next year and exactly how many teachers. It's not going to be more. I kind of gave you the worst case scenario. It could actually be less. Any questions about the process or anything?
So I don't have a question, it's more of a comment. I really appreciate the thoroughness, because some districts make the committee, they look at the green light resources, they get some samples, and then they just pick a product. But to go to the, narrowing it down, and then to have the coach help the teachers pilot some lessons with the real materials, and then take that extra step to visit other districts, and then to survey the teachers, that is a tremendous amount of work, but to have that vision that this is important, because a lot of districts can't execute that vision. And it's
Thank
great
you.
that the teachers were willing to put the time in to really try those materials, because that's how you really know.
Yeah.
Everyone, if you just look at their websites and you get that presentation from the vendor, everyone's going to say, aligned to Common Core standards, here's the research, here's the great boost in test scores, our product is the best. It's really hard, but you have to actually, that's
the
a lot of
te-
work to try those lessons out.
It was a lot of time. Like I said, we're almost at the year mark from when
Yeah,
we started.
yeah.
And, but the teachers were truly invested in it. And, of course, I've been at the elementary school when I was principal there, and I know that staff really well. And they, we did a lot of work with what we had, and we were doing really well with the products that we were using. We always supplemented the phonics piece because we knew that's what was missing from that particular product. So they wanted to make sure, and middle school teachers as well, that we picked something that maybe it's not 100% of what we want, but it's as close as we're going to get, and we know that we're going to supplement where we need to.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, and, all of the work from the curriculum teams and your leadership with that, because, they're teaching to the standards, they've got their scope and sequence, and the resource, whatever is selected, is just to help them get there. So thank you for all of your hard work, and I think this is great. So thank you.
Gail, with the change from one company to the next in terms of curriculum from grades 5 to 6, did your committee think that there was a nice, smooth vertical articulation between where one ends and the other picks up?
Yeah, so we actually looked at the Savvis product, which is what 612 is going to use. We looked at it for K5 to see if, maybe we could just do the same one for the whole district. And they really didn't like the product for K5. They didn't like the texts that were used. And as far as it being a smooth transition, I mean, both products have the science of reading. Both products have the standards. Both products have pretty much they're doing a whole class lesson, and then it goes into small group work and individual work and so on. So I don't think it's going to be a huge transition. What we didn't want to have is different products in every grade level. We only wanted one break, which is exactly what we did with math. For example, Bridges is K4, and then we go to Savvis for the rest of the school. We don't want all these different products. 2 is pretty much a natural break.
In a district our small, sometimes teachers change grade levels
Right.
too, so.
Yeah.
I would also just add, a great appreciation for this committee and all the investigative work that they've done. And I'm going to ask my favorite question. Was there representatives, I'm sure there was, but I just want to ask, from each of the schools when it came to reviewing this material?
Yep, we had 2 from K, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 2 K teachers, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. We had a 5, 6 teacher, we had a special educator, we had a reading specialist, interventionist, yep, Jessica, myself. Yeah, even a speech and language teacher, yeah. It was a great committee.
So what I really appreciate about this, not to interrupt, is not only have we, based on the structure of this review process, winnowed it down to out of all of these 6 different options to the top 2 high-quality materials, but we're also putting emphasis on it being user-friendly, a preference of the teachers and staff who will be using this material. So it's really wonderful to see that we're going by the preference of the staff and we're still abiding by a high quality of materials. I was wondering if you might be able to just give a quick explanation on the level ratings, like how the ratings were determined. I see text quality for, say, like grade 3, 37 out of 42. What defines a quality of text, for instance?
So these ratings are from Ed Reports, and I think I put I can't get to the link from here, but if you go on to Ed Reports, you can actually see the full report for every single curriculum that we looked at, so it gives it in more detail. But so the points, for example, for text quality, the most points that they could get for grades K through 2 was 58. So you can see that, you know, the scores for this particular were pretty high and so on. One thing that we learned from Ed Reports is they say not all shades of green are the same. So, for example, if the total amount of points is, I'm making this up, you know, 400 and you need 360 to be green, there are going to be some that are really close to the 400 and some that are more on the 360 or whatever the number should be. So we did want to make sure that when we looked at the amounts that they scored, that we were pretty close to what the total numbers were. As you can see, teacher usability, it scored really high. As far as text quality, back to your question, so that's looking at, are they authentic texts? Are the texts including a diversity of authors, a diversity of characters? Are the texts at different reading levels? Are they at different interest levels? Anything you want to add to that? That's
I
pretty
think
much it.
also just related to what the Common Core outlines for vocabulary complexity and looking at what the demands on students will be when they look at those texts and what tasks can be associated with that to make an overall big picture of a high level, grade level demand on students for rigor in the classroom.
I had a quick question. So does this align with, you know, when the students go on to their diagnostic and weekly assessments in iReady, are they going to be confused with the change in curriculum, or is it pretty well aligned with what they're going to be seeing?
So iReady is based on the Common Core state standards for the grade level, and so is this product. So it should be a smooth transition from...
And there are assessments built into the product as well?
There are assessments built into the product as well. One thing that we're going to have to, when we sit down in Curriculum Academy or when we sit down with the teachers, is really, because we don't want to overtest the kids either, is really trying to plan, okay, so are we going to use the iReady score for this, or do we need to also do this additional assessment that is in CKLA? And we're going to have to really streamline those assessments so the kids aren't over-tested, but that we're getting what we need to make educational decisions based on the individual students.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we vote?
I just want to say, echo everyone's opinion that the effort put into here really shows, and thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
All right. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Gail.
Great, thank you.
Thank you both. All right, so on to item number 5. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration for the purchase of desktop computers and monitors for the digital media production sign-out lab from Dell Technologies in the total amount of $38,915.88?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Good evening. This is actually what I brought to you and explained to you at the last budget meeting, but with the adoption and with the acceptance of the new digital media production CTE, we're going to need to build a lab for that. So we were awarded a grant from the state, Technology and Furniture Fund Capital Grant, which after discussions with Pete and Karen, the perfect use, it kind of fell at the perfect time, is with the adoption of this new CTE, we need to equip the room. So we're using this to fully equip Brian Jennings' program and the lab. So the lab, this is for the desktops that will be used in the room. They're high graphics cards, lots of memory for all the video projects and video editing, photo editing, all of the projects he'll be doing in there. So the reason I call it a digital media production and sign-out lab is he's assigned there. He'll probably be there first 2 periods of the day, and we don't know how quickly this program will grow. So the rest of the day, it's not going to be a lab that just sits there. The art teachers, any media teacher, any social studies teacher, anybody can use it as a sign-out lab as well. So, and just a little background, sorry, a little background on how we came up with this. Derek at the high school and Brian and I have met 3 times already, kind of going over his vision of what he needs in his classroom, what he wants. And we've gone through, like I said, 3 meetings already. And this will be the furniture piece, which is coming up, and this is the desktop piece. We already have the laptop piece. We ordered a vocal booth. So the only remaining, actually the wiring for this is being done as we speak. And the last piece of this will be the cameras that Brian needs. But we were trying to figure out what the remaining balance would be after everything else was ordered so he could see what he could afford as far as cameras go. So we'll be following up after this meeting for him to determine which cameras he does need for his program.
And I think it's awesome with the timing, new CTE program. And again, it's because the district is always forward-thinking, always has a vision. And then when a grant becomes available and we receive that grant, we're ready to go and ready to move on it. So.
Yeah, so it's important that we're moving on this so quickly too, because everything needs to be encumbered. But prior to July 1st, but we're hoping everything will even be received prior to July 1st so we can fully set up the lab during the summer.
Yeah, very exciting. Any comments or questions from anyone?
I just want to say thank you for being on top of this and for presenting this to the committee so that we not only can utilize but take advantage of this incredible opportunity. And again, really appreciate it. And just for the public, I'm sure you've already explained this, but there's reimbursement involved with this grant, correct?
Yeah, so the total amount that we're awarded for the grant is $86,229. So as soon as we encumber the money and spend it and receive it, we'll be receiving that as reimbursement from the state.
Yeah, it's the full amount, so you can go all the way up to the, I'm sure we'll get as close to the dollar as we can.
Let's go for it.
If I have to go over a few dollars and put in some of my technology funds, I will do that.
that's
We will
great.
use every dollar of it.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
my full support in doing that as a member of the technology committee. Just get, take advantage of this. That's the beauty of our staff.
Yes, thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. First of all, I think it's wonderful that the CTE is rolling out. I think that it's wonderful that a small district like this can fund it, and I do think it's going to bring in kids from other districts. So I think it's going to be a revenue source for us, which is really, really awesome. My question to you, just with technology and foreseeing, and I know you are an expert after all the questions I have asked you, what do you see the cost year to year? I mean, do you see this lab really, I mean, are we going to have to update, do you think 3 years from now? Because right now, I mean, we're rolling out probably 2 versions ahead of what you ordered.
Yeah, so these, like I said, and Brian and I really sat down and thought about the future thinking, and he's reached out to other CTs similar to this, and he's very experienced in the video production, so he had a good baseline as far as what he wanted. Our goal was to make this last more than a 3 year. So we're expecting these computers to last 5 or 6 years. We kind of went above the minimum specs that he proposed to us since we had the funds. So we're looking at least 5 years for these, and the only perpetual cost for these on a yearly basis would be the Adobe licenses for him to run his Adobe Photoshop and like any of his video products, and then just the normal cybersecurity, CrowdStrike on it. But beyond that, there's no additional costs.
I think that's wonderful that you have, and Brian has this forward thinking. I would just like to also comment, I know he's not here right now, but the energy that he brings, because my kiddos love him, and they're going to miss him next year at the elementary school, is I just think it's a perfect marriage into next year. And I really do think and hope, and as earlier I was saying, that becomes a nice revenue source, and it kind of brings Narragansett to the top, so we don't have to discuss things like cuts in the future. So to invest in that and to invest in people like Brian, I think is pretty awesome. So thank you thinking ahead, because that was the first thing I was thinking was, I'm sure there's 2 versions of specs after this.
Yeah. So we did. We went above what the minimum was, and a minimum of 5 years on these at least.
Actually, I was going to ask, because Jen's comment sparked something. Is there anything that we can invest in, like long-term warranties or something within these costs? I know, or is it like maxed out already?
These come with, and Dell usually offers a standard 3-year warranty on it. This comes with a 3-year warranty. Beyond that, it's usually, you know, a hard drive that fails or a memory chip. So it's something minor that we would pay to replace. It's usually not like the entire system.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Just
we
wondered.
have similar systems to this in the computer CTE that Chris Hers has, and we've had minor issues after the 3 years, but nothing where we've had to do full replacements.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And we've got one more. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration for the purchase of furniture for the digital media production sign-out lab from School Outfitters in the total amount of $8,375.56?
So moved.
Discussion.
So furniture is not my expertise, but I did reach out and once again, we talked Brian and Steve recommended the School Outfitters, and Brian and I kind of sat down and discussed what he would want in his classroom, and not knowing how quickly the program will grow, or, you know, maybe it doesn't grow as quickly as that. We didn't want to buy furniture that was permanent within a room, because if the program grows, we can always move this furniture and the desktops into a bigger room. So we didn't want to go with the full, you know, installed lab tables that you can't move down the road. So we're like, let's just go. And Brian was very willing. Let's just do basic tables. I'd rather see the funds used for the computers, the cameras, the things that really affect the kids. So we went through, we kind of designed the room out. So it's, you know, he has 6 tables where you'll have 2 computers on each. He'll have some rectangular and circular tables within the classroom. We discussed wheelchairs versus permanent chairs, and he saw a little bit of more breakage with the wheelchairs, and he didn't really need those. So we went with, you know, non-wheel static chairs, and this was kind of his design. I kind of, like I said, took the advice from Steve as far as where to purchase and what to look for, and this is what we came up with.
I just want to say thank you for sharing that. Not only are you presenting furniture for approval here, but it's also been thoughtfully designed so that we're not just buying furniture and hoping it fits. So it's glad to know that there's been a lot of thought that's gone throughout this whole process, and I look forward to seeing it all come together.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been great working with Brian, and, you know, seeing his enthusiasm for this, and you know, we've kind of thought it through, and really it's his CTE, so I'm kind of just giving him what he needs, and like I said, the grant came at a perfect time, so it's not costing the district any funds whatsoever.
Any other comments or questions?
I just had one question on page 1 of the memorandum,
Yep.
down under funding, the CTE boost. Is that something that we didn't qualify for? I mean, since this is all for a CTE program? Or is
Well,
that-
it's not strictly, and that's why it's not strictly for CTE only. We're using it as the sign-out lab too, so it's not strictly. But I don't know the specifics on the CTE boost piece, because I think by the time I saw this, we were already awarded this amount. So I don't think there was anything that we could have gone above this amount, but.
Right, that was just based on a ride calculation. They didn't ask for us to apply for this in any way, so I'm uncertain about what that CTE boost would be. We can find out for you, but.
I was curious if anybody else got it.
No, we can ask.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any communications people want to mention before we adjourn? All right. So we are back March 27th at 7 o'clock here. Dr. Cummings is going to present the school budget that we approved tonight to the town council. And then our regular business meeting will be April 19th at 7. Is there a motion to adjourn at 9:05?